ALTBAYS. 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 ALTBAYS show. It's live, brought to you by ALTBAYS.nz. You're watching us right now. Are you? Yes, so you are on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel. There's also a little icon, a button just below the screen that says join. And if you click on that button, it means that you are keen to become a member of our platform, and you can donate $5, $10, whatever you can to make sure that our show keeps growing and we keep bringing amazing people to have conversations, because that's what we're all about. Okay, we like to listen to people's perspectives, and we hope that you do the same. You're not supposed to agree with or disagree with everything that you see and hear, but it's a great opportunity to create some empathy and see where people are coming from, and that's what we're trying to do with this show. Okay, so if you understand that, thanks for joining us, and yeah, stay with us. We are a podcast, so you can find us on the main audio platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all the main ones. We're there, ALTBAYS. And we also have a second channel called the ALTBAYS Clips, where we cut some pieces of the conversations. If you don't have time to watch the whole show, you can go and watch some of the clips. And then if you like it, you can go for the full show. Okay? You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. That would be cool. That would be great if you could. If you like what you see, obviously. And if you are in the Coromandel now, our media group will be running a local magazine called Coromind that will be out in January. Okay, for the people who know, I work at a school, and we've been here in this community for 10 years. We put an amazing group of people together, and we are doing a beautiful collaborative work. So if you would like to write for the magazine, if you would like to be an advertiser, if you want to know more about this project, get in touch with us, send us a message on YouTube or info@altbays.nz, and we will tell you more about this project. Did I miss anything, Papa?
Nope.
Thank you very much. Tonight, I'm gonna have a co-chat with Terri. I was wondering if I say LIPANOVIC or LIPANOVIC.
Vic. It was originally Itch, but
yeah,
it's been anglicised for about 3 generations now.
I like Lipanovic. Where's the name from?
Croatia.
Croatia.
My paternal grandfather came out here when he was 12 as a gum digger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, up in Northland.
There you go. Terri Lipanovic. I like the Lipanovic. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
It's good to see you, Terri.
Yeah, good to see you too, Leo.
We know each other for a few years, eh?
Yeah, we have. Yep, we sure have. We've worked together.
We worked together.
Yep.
And here we are, having a good chat.
Yep, here we are.
So I always remember our conversations about the pharmaceutical industry and all the chemicals and all these things that were a big part of your life for many, many years. Is that right?
Oh, they certainly were. Yes, right from after I left school, I went to work for a laboratory, and they made me go to university. I thought I'd sat the last exam of my life when I left school, but no, they made me go to university and get 3 degrees.
Whoa.
And
what are they? Which degrees?
Chemistry, biochemistry, and microbiology. Yep. Wow. Because the lab was quite quite varied. It had everything from manufacturing through to a bacteriology lab, to forensics, to blood testing. For all the drunk drivers, we used to get a copy of their blood. So it was very interesting work.
So like when it's amazing how we can pick up everything from the samples, right? Was it something that they always fascinated you, of like how the human body works and how much information you can get from like this tiny?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I originally wanted to be a vet, but I just couldn't. I couldn't bear cutting animals up, and I didn't like blood, so I went into that side of it. No, science has always intrigued me. I do remember, my first year at uni being told you've got to have a good imagination to be a scientist. And when you think about it, how on earth did people discover the atom and things like that? How did they, sort of visualise it in their minds? So I think you do have to have a good imagination.
What were the things that really surprised you, that you remember at the start of the journey, that you were seeing people working and you were like, whoa, is that how we do this? I would never think that was the way.
Oh, it was just, so varied. You did everything from gold analysis, from gold mining. It's a sensitive subject, I know, on this peninsula, but we used to get samples and, put them in a crucible and a great big kiln and do the gold assays from that.
So you could tell how much you would have?
Yes, they were all sort of taken out of little areas, and so you could pinpoint where the gold was basically in that area.
Well, because regardless of what people think it's right or wrong to do the mining in an area, there are a lot of professionals working for those industries, right? I think it's the same with the oil industry and a lot of them.
Right, yeah.
Do you think that most of the discoveries and most of the things that become quite useful for societies and communities, they come from these fundings, from businesses that sometimes people don't support that much? But then, because I always remember that saying that like the technology that we use nowadays was used by the army 30 years ago.
Oh, it's quite often the way. I mean, and some technologies actually endure. There's nothing better comes along, so you just continue, making use of that particular technology. I mean, there's always there's always work on things, and there are a couple of areas that I refused to work in, and that was anything that had anything to do with animal testing. So I didn't sell anything to do with cosmetics or personal care and home care. When you're selling industrial chemicals, you know that they're particularly nasty anyway, and they're going into a nasty area where they're not going to hurt anybody. But not so with, like a mascara that has to be tested on rabbits that don't blink and all those things. I just refuse to sell them.
You're talking to someone who, as you know, doesn't consume animals or don't buy animal products and all that stuff. But like, I just want to play a little bit of devil's advocates on that one.
Yeah.
So when people say, oh, you don't want the animal testing, but are there things that we wouldn't have nowadays if it was not for the animal testing? Like, because the ethics will say that you don't want to use humans for some tests, right? And as I said, I think we shouldn't use the animals anyway.
I don't think we should.
But is it an excuse for the way that medicine has evolved and everything?
I don't think it's so much. A lot of cancer drugs have been tested on, animals prior to going into human trials, and that, in a way, may be necessary. But I still disagree with it. But what I really object to is, cosmetic products, and personal care like shampoos. They keep developing them and they keep producing new ones, new brands, and they all have to be tested on animals. And, I just basically refuse to. There are a couple of companies that had products that I just refused to sell their products. And I said to my boss, fire me if you're not happy. Because
clearly it's not that necessary for cosmetics, right?
No.
So if you have other brands who don't do animal testing, it clearly states that those companies are much more after profits than anything else, right? Because it probably is the cheapest way to test on animals, right?
Oh, it is. You can actually develop computer programs that will actually give you pretty good results these days. You can actually do that, but it's easier just to buy a few thousand rats or mice and rabbits and just dispose of them quite easily.
When you say, when you gave me a little bit of a bio about you and you say raw materials, what are we talking about when you say raw materials?
Oh, well, we're talking about the base chemicals. that are used in manufacture. So they're not the finished product. Like we would bring in something like, say, titanium dioxide, and that would go into paper, paint, printing inks. That would go into cosmetics, but it was a chemical that wasn't tested on animals, and it went into a lot of things. So that was the raw material. We didn't bring in a made-up material.
Which ones of those materials, like, most people wouldn't believe how much harm you can do with them?
Well, I mean, the most toxic product on earth is, causes botulism. I'm just trying to think of what it's called. The bacterium.
Bacterium.
The bacterium from, how you get Botox? That's
Yes.
actually derived from the spotuli. And 1 kilo of this particular bacterium would wipe out all of humanity. It's the most toxic product on earth, and it's a natural product. So not all natural products are safe. You've got products like arsenic, uranium, all of these products that are natural, that are quite deadly, and a lot of synthetics that are made that are quite safe. So
what makes them deadly is the concentration? Because I've heard this all the time. We all hear people who are not knowledgeable about a subject. They say, oh, but it's natural anyway, it's going to go back to nature. So the problem is actually in the way that we extract and we concentrate them. Is that what it is?
The toxin is in the dosage. Vitamin D, which is quite natural, sunshine, but if you take it in a pill form, you don't want to take too much. That is quite toxic. Caffeine as a substance is very toxic. Not what you drink in your coffee, but the actual concentrated caffeine. But people, just sort of don't think about that. The
Botox thing that you mentioned.
It's diluted down quite a lot, but it actually paralyses. That's how it works. And it actually paralyses, practically every nerve in your system. So that's, if you were to take it, imbibe it, yep.
Terri, why do we do that to our bodies? Why do people have this thing? Is it influence?
Money. I think money sort of rules all of these things. That I really do. It's a new product, marketing. We can make, we instead of selling that product, that old shampoo, we can sort of make everybody buy this different one here.
It's also quite detrimental to the natural laws of life, because we see getting old as a problem. We see aging as a problem, right? Because we all want to look younger.
Well, especially women. I mean, men are allowed to age. They usually look better as they age, whereas women don't. And, so they certainly throw a lot of products at women that will keep them slim and, hair colours, skin products, all of those things.
And then the same industry sells the pills that cure the cancer that those products gave them. Yeah.
Well, if it wasn't for science, we wouldn't be living as long. I mean, science as far as, cooling products, refrigeration, all of these products, technologies, that comes from science, and that's also lengthened our lives. So there's good and bad things.
Yes. What were the great things that you worked with that you were so happy to see it getting out there in the world? Because can you tell me a little bit about being the first woman in Australia? Can you tell me that story that you said in the last minute, the thing?
Yeah, after I did my time in the laboratory and got my degrees and went and worked for a scientific equipment company. And then I did my big OE and I went over to the UK for a couple of years. I worked for another scientific company that sold mainly centrifuges and incubators and all sorts of things to hospitals and universities. And when I came back home, I thought the only way I'm going to get a car is to get a company car, because I'm flat broke after hardly working. I worked for about 6 months over there out of 2.5 years. So I went for a job at a chemicals company, and I got it. But what I found out later was that my appointment had to be approved by Australia. They had to ask various people in the States and Europe and the UK, was it okay if a woman came into the industry? Because I was the first woman in Australasia in the business. And I heard years later that, there weren't any women in Europe or the States doing that either, so you must have been the first in the world. But I can't confirm that. But if I went to a conference in New Zealand, it was me and 400 men.
Wow.
It was a very male, dominated industry for many years.
Did you feel any pressure or what did that empower you, or you were oblivious about it? You were just doing your thing?
No, I was very conscious of it because I knew that as I was the only one, I had to do a good job, because if I didn't, it would be like, trust a woman to mess it up. Well, I think I was only 22, 23 when I got the job, and most of them were probably well into their 40s, the youngest ones. And they'd been in the industry for years, so it was, quite a challenge. So I had to make sure I knew my product.
And you knew, I'm sure you knew.
Well, I had to. I certainly studied up on what it could do and what they needed and why they needed it and how it would fix things. And yeah.
So before we mentioned that, I asked you what were the things, what were the times or the products or the companies that you got involved with that you were so happy about providing those services to people? Like, what were the things that really made you happy during these years working with?
Well, I basically viewed us as problem solvers. I mean, we had the bread and butter lines that we sold people, but I'd always ask someone at the end of a meeting, is there something you're having a problem with, or a new project or something? And I'm just trying to think. I do recall going to the Dairy Research Institute in Palmerston North, which had about 600 employees and all doing research for the dairy industry. And it's now owned by Fonterra, of course. And I remember going in there and saying, have you, we've got this new product. We've just picked it up from Europe. I went over there, I did a $300 US dollar taxi trip out to this plant out the back of Beyond to talk to them. And I said, we've got this product called inulin. And they kept saying, we don't need insulin. I was saying, no, it's not insulin, it's inulin. And it's for use in baby formula. Anyway, they I gave them all the information, and anyway, about 2 weeks later, they phoned up and said, do you know that product you were talking about? Can we have a sample? And we ended up selling, I think, about 1,500 tonnes of the product out of a new plant in Belgium, which they manufactured, they manufactured into baby formula here and shipped off to Southeast Asia. So that was something that, Fonterra basically got the jump on the rest of the world.
Right.
And that was why they were, sort of shooting so much baby formula away.
That's another polemic one, isn't it? The baby formula that is sold to a lot of countries, and some of them really benefit from it, but some others...
Some of them don't, yeah, I know. There's a story that breast is best, and that is recognised, but not every woman can breastfeed. So, this is a help. Yeah.
When you mentioned the UK, what decade was that? What time? Time and place was that?
I was there in the late 70s, early 80s.
So there was a lot of going on, culturally.
Oh yeah.
Was it a progressive time? Because I can relate to ska music that I love so much, and all those two-tone movements of black people and white people getting together, the working class and the real skinheads at the start that then got a bad denotation, but the people who know the story know that they were actually the good people. They were the ones getting together, and then it kind of got mixed up and everything. But was it a time for being out there and to express who you wanted to be and fight for your rights?
Oh yeah, it was. Thatcher had just got in, so that wasn't so good. They had the strikes, and it was pretty. They were going through a pretty hard time when I got there. You know, things weren't going well for Britain. It was very depressed, and nobody was happy. So it was always nice to get across to Europe, you know, for weekends and things like that. It just seemed so much brighter and different. Yeah.
But do you think a lot of those movements flourished because of over time that there was oppression? And
yeah, I was there at the time that gay liberation was sort of starting. So I went on a few marches in the late 70s.
What are the first memories you have from that? Like, what do you remember seeing it that caught your attention and you joined the movement? How was that?
Well, I came out over there, away from home and away from all of the pressures of conforming.
Did you know before?
Yes, but I didn't know what to do about it. So I got over there and, you know, sort of got a little involved, and it was very much on the outer in those years. And we walked down and, you know, we sort of got booed and hissed and yelled at, and not much different from when I walked down Queen Street in 1980, everybody was just standing there staring.
Confused?
No reaction. I think it was a Friday night, and they were all sort of like, you know, what's this?
Like seeing two women together, or seeing a group of people together, like different.
Well, no one was doing any public displays of affection. We were just marching with signs, right. You know, gay liberation, and I think people, you know, because Friday night in Queen Street back in the days, it was packed, and everyone was just sort of standing there looking at us thinking, what the hell are they doing? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So in the UK, when that movement started, what was the movement asking for?
Well, the same.
And who were the people?
Oh, well, some of the people I've still kept in contact with, who are now in their 70s. You know, there's quite a few of them who have actually had to come out of retirement because we're having to fight for our rights all over again. We thought we'd done the work and that it was all okay, but it seems that no, we're having to do it all over again.
So there was how do you say, like gay men?
Oh, men and women,
lesbians.
Yes,
and there was it.
There were no trans.
Right.
No trans people.
Right. There were no trans, like it was not a thing, or like they were not part of that movement?
Well, we used to see the occasional one, but you know, mainly trans women, but and they were accepted into the community, but there were very few of them, and we just you know, at pubs and clubs and things like that, they just, you know, became part of the group. It was not a problem.
And so tell me a bit more about the achievements, because you told me that you were with the Rainbow. Do you say Rainbow Community? Do you say Rainbow Group for many years? Is that right?
For about 45 years.
Wow.
And you know, I've been very much part of it in Auckland.
When you say that you were part of the movement, how does it work? Like by identifying yourself, by putting yourself out there, are you already part of the movement, or you mean like in a way that you were engaging with it, you were after like changes and
we were definitely after changes. I mean, we went on marches and protests, and you know, sort of. I had a badge that used to, you know, sort of single me out. But and back in the days, nobody ever worried about the women because we weren't illegal. But the men, up until 1986, male homosexuality here was a criminal offence, and I had to actually, on a couple of occasions, I had phone calls in the middle of the night from friends who had actually been arrested, and could I come down to, you know, the downtown police station and pick them up and take them home. And that used to happen, every couple of months, because the police would, you know, decide that it was about time they did a raid on the gay boys.
Right. So being a homosexual, being a gay man in New Zealand was against the law, not easy until 1986.
That was when it was decriminalised. But I think even after that, I mean, I've had a couple of friends who have been gay bashed.
Who were the people and how did it happen to become decriminalised?
Well, I think it started, I think, even in the 70s. I think one of the Labour ministers, I think it was Frere, he actually tried to get it decriminalised. But you see, they wanted the age for men to be higher than, you know, the age of consent to be higher. I think they wanted it to be about 20. I can't remember, because it was quite a while back then when with heterosexual couples it was 16. And the guys basically said, we're not going to accept that. No, we want to be like everyone else. And then, you know, so once again in the early 80s, Labour took it up again. And we used to go to meetings. The evangelical churches actually were very much against it. We went to meetings. We got threatened by good Christians to call it. We were told to call ambulances because we'd need them when we left. Fortunately, nothing too bad, you know, eventuated. But so that got through. That got voted through. But that was a petition against us that had 800,000 signatures collected that they did not want, decriminalisation of male homosexuality in New Zealand. 800,000 people signed back in, I think it was 1985.
Wow.
So
it's a lot. The country was what, 3 million people maybe?
Yeah. So that's adults. So you consider how many people were against gay reform. So that went through, and then
Terri, what was the argument? Like, what would people would say? Like, the ones against it would say, "Oh, this is bad for your family. This is against family values."
Oh, yes, it was absolutely that. I mean, it was
the devil's thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly what it was, because it was mainly the churches, although the Catholic, Anglican churches, and I can't remember. I think the Presbyterians still stayed hard on it, and the Methodists might have too. But the Anglican and the Catholic churches both said, hate the sin, love the sinner, sort of thing.
Right.
And they sort of, they became okay about it all. But it was interesting times. I can remember being in tears quite a few times after being at some of those meetings and being jostled and, being told what we were and all sorts of things.
So that was under Labour?
It was Labour that got that through, yes. And
do you remember who the Prime Minister was at the time?
Gosh, I'm trying to think back. It was 86, so I think it might have been still Longy or one of,
Someone in the audience will.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
86, Taylor Prime Minister, 86.
I know it was Fran Wild who pushed it through. She was the one who took it upon herself, and she got continually threatened, and I think her house got, paint thrown at it and all sorts of things like that.
It was David Lange?
David Longy. So, it was David Longy, yeah.
Right, 86.
Yeah, and then the AIDS epidemic came along, and I was burying friends, every week, and sometimes the families didn't want anything to do with them, and we ended up, basically passing a hat around to raise money for funerals.
Wow, oof.
Of young, gorgeous gay guys who, whose families didn't want to, have a bar with them. So we also raised money. I was on the committee of the what was then called the fifth season garden club. It was a lesbian and gay garden club, and it was an absolute hoot. We had a wonderful time, but we raised money for the Heroic Gardens, which the money went to the HIV hospices and the patients. So we also did that, and so I think there's always been a core group of us who have been there and done things.
I was not even alive at the time, but I got to...
Thanks a lot.
Sorry, Terri.
Thanks for reminding me.
But is it time to run? No, we're good.
Yeah.
So for the people who are listening to us from overseas, what you can hear right now is the siren. And the siren used to be used to tell the people around here that a tsunami was coming, right, Terri? But it's not anymore.
No.
Not anymore.
So we don't know.
So we don't know. It might be for the fire service right now, probably. For the firefighters. Yeah, that's what it is, right?
Yeah. If you hear a big splash, you know it's a tsunami.
Yeah. Then you try to run, or you start to pray if you like to pray. As I was saying, I always followed music. I always followed the musicians and the party people telling stories about how HIV ruined an era.
Oh yeah.
Where people were like so happy that, as you mentioned, now we can really follow history. You know, like there was a moment of oppression and fights, and then legislation comes. People are happy. People are celebrating. And then HIV comes. And I remember this punk rocker from São Paulo, and he was saying that like the parties were over. People were not even kissing anymore. Like people were afraid, like even shaking hands. It was quite traumatic. Can you take me through some stories from that moment to like of being bliss, so happy, and then things start to change because of HIV?
Well, you know, but I can remember when our first AIDS case evolved. It was Bruce Burnett. Now the centre in Auckland is named after him. He kept telling, the medical profession, I believe I have HIV. I have all the symptoms. And I think he kept telling them for about 9 months. But there were no treatments back then, and nobody knew how many people could catch it, or how you could catch it. You know, as you say, just a handshake or something. And I knew a guy even years later who had HIV and worked in a clothing shop. He had to have his own cup and his own utensils and all this sort of thing. They just wouldn't, they didn't want to go anywhere near him. But he knew so much about the industry that they couldn't afford to let him go.
Wow.
I got told by an angry co-worker one day, oh, you'll probably die of AIDS anyway. That's what they said to me, and I was in my 20s. And I said, well, it's highly unlikely because lesbians are actually the safest demographic of all. So, this is what used to amaze me, because people used to say it's a gay disease and it's God's wrath on the gays. But us women were the safest out of any demographic on earth, even heterosexual women. So it wasn't a gay disease.
Wow. Well, yeah. When things started to change in the movement, in the gay community movement, in the rainbow movement, for you at least, like for your group of friends, when things started to change?
Well, I think it sort of changed for a lot of us around about 2015.
Okay, that's fairly recent.
Yeah. Well, we'd got gay marriage. Everything had we had all the rights that everybody else had, so we just relaxed and just went back to life. Admittedly, we'd lost a whole generation of gay men who would have been leaders and mentors now, but most of them died. In about 2015, I think after gay marriage was legalised in the UK, Stonewall, which had been set up years ago to fight for LGB rights in the UK, suddenly found themselves with nothing to do, nothing to fight for, and no way to get donations. So they sort of looked around and thought, what can we do? And started on the gender ideology track.
Okay, just let me stop you there. Before that, was there anything that was coming from the gender situation to the table?
No, I can't remember many trans people being part of the LGB, you know, the clubs and the pubs and all the parties. As I said, there might have been one or two around, but that was it. But it just wasn't part of the community. But suddenly, around about 2015, we started to see a lot of AGP men.
AGP.
That stands for, this is going to upset a few people, autogynephilia, which means that men who put on women's clothing and get sexually aroused by it. Now, a lot of these...
But is that term, like, does that term define...
Not all trans women, no. No, but it's a lot of them who are sort of coming into the movement. How can I explain this? You know, I've supported trans for decades, and I actually almost got thrown out of a group because I defended them and, you know, said they had every right to be in every space they wanted to be. And the more I looked at it, it took me about a good 6 months of reading everything from both sides to sort of switch, to flip-flop.
When we say the trans people, we just, I think it's important to get these definitions right for my own train of thought and for the people listening. We're talking about not necessarily people who take on the surgeries and everything. We're just talking about people like males, like sex males, like who were born as a male, who decide to dress up or to identify. Is that the right word? Identify as a woman.
We have no problem.
There's a transgender. Okay, I just want to get everything right from the code.
Yep. Well, 90% of trans women never have genital surgery, and most are heterosexual men. And this is where we find, they're not gay men, this is where we find where women have a problem, especially lesbians, because these men are demanding access to women's safe spaces like toilets, and we can see now that many of them are being turned into gender-neutral toilets. We're not saying that they're all bad or anything, but it just makes it easier for someone who isn't good to do that and come in and attack women. They are actually demanding spaces in our sports, that every time they're in a sports, in a team, a woman loses a spot. They have, they've gone through male puberty, therefore they've got stronger bones and muscles, they've got a larger heart and lung capacity, their joints are more manoeuvrable, and they're still about, even after years of hormones, still about 12 to 15% faster than females. Punch strength is about 90% stronger than a female, so they can do a lot of damage, say on a rugby field or something like that, to women. But there's also the fact that they are accepted into women's refuges. Women's Refuge New Zealand has actually confirmed to me that they do accept trans women coming into their refuges. Now, if you've been raped by a man, and this has happened over in Edinburgh, the manager of the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre is a trans woman who has actually told women coming in that you just have to deal with it. The fact that you get traumatised by a man being in charge of this place is just your problem. And the fact that they may even be examined by a trans woman, this is all quite traumatic towards them, for them.
How do we get to see the other side of the story, the side of the trans person who probably also went through traumatic events in life,
Absolutely.
or it's going through a lot of problems to accept themselves the way that they are, and then they find groups who understand or who offer support, and they say, look, you gotta put yourself out there and be who you are, and we're gonna support you. So how are these dynamics playing? Because in my view, I don't see a problem with someone wanting to be whatever they want to be.
I don't either.
And then, but I listen to you, and I understand when you say that it can get to spaces where there are still answers that are not, that are points that don't have an answer yet. How are we going to find a balance for that? Because I'm sorry, but like sometimes it feels a bit like it's an exclusion when you take a letter. You probably will tell me that the letter was never there, and the T or the Q was never there, and then it was introduced. But like, do we have to go through the exclusion part of thing? Like, do you think there's a way that will come, or some people who are actively working to trying to find a common ground there?
We're all trying to find a common ground. But the thing is that by including men, you are excluding women. It's not a pie, you know, where you just share it around. By bringing men in, you are excluding women. You are actually taking sports, you know, team positions away from women. Laurel Hubbard went off to the Olympics as a woman. There was a woman here who missed out on a spot. She shouldn't have, you know, in the women's weightlifting.
Terri, what? Maybe you know better. Maybe you don't. You know more than me. I thought that was something to do with the testosterone levels, because there's this athlete in America that it was actually the opposite happened to her. She's a woman.
Oh yeah.
And she couldn't classify as a woman to compete because she actually had higher levels of testosterone.
That's right.
And that made me think, I was like, why people keep arguing this if they're going back to the levels of, is that what it is?
Well, testosterone is the strength, you know, hormone. And that's, you know, I mean, when I think back to when I was a kid, I could outrun, outswim, outrow every boy my age until their puberty came along, and then wham, they were just off with this testosterone. And that's what it does. And there's just no getting around that. I mean, they talk about dropping their testosterone levels, but even at their lowest, they're still a lot higher than any woman.
Right. So that's where I was trying to get it clear.
Sorry, Leo, there is some messages in the group. If you want to open the chat, otherwise we're gonna get behind with the topics.
Would you like to read them? And because you're following the threads, or you want me to?
I want you to.
Yeah. So I can do that, because Terri, as I was saying, I thought that it was a requirement that the testosterone was similar, or at least.
No, it's still quite often about 10 times higher than that of a woman.
Okay. For some reason, say, oh yeah. You had all those rights, yet now you attack the trans community for wanting the same. Why you guys feel so obsessed with where people take a piss?
Well, would not actually. Well, you know, the potential is there for women to be harmed, and if we let one in, we have to let all of them in, and we don't know who is good and who is bad. As I said, I've supported trans people for years. Now, the way I'm not talking about exclusion. We would like, you know, women fought for years to have any teams. When I grew up, there were no soccer, you know, no football, no rugby teams, no rowing teams, and we fought for those for years. Now, I think that, you know, transgender, non-binary people, the Q, the T, they need their own divisions, and they need to fight for those themselves. And I'm quite happy to help them fight for those. But I don't believe that, you know, that they should be taking sports scholarships off women at American universities, or, you know, going into prisons with women.
There's another comment that says, the organization you said wasn't bothered by trans people until 2015 wouldn't have had its name without the Great Stonewall Riot, which was mostly trans.
No, it wasn't. That's another fallacy.
People standing up to a police raid on a LGBTQA plus space.
They absolutely weren't. And that, we've even got the original Stonewallers, Fred Sargent and another guy. Fred was there the first night, and he said they were not there. There were no trans people there. Marsha, Malcolm, he was known as Marsha and Malcolm. He, in his own words, he was not trans. He actually is on YouTube saying that he's a gay guy. And he said he didn't get there till about 4 a.m, and neither did, I think it was Sylvia Rivera, the two drag queens. They were drag queens, yeah, so they didn't get there. And this is something that has been perpetuated by the TQ group, about this fallacy. And poor old Fred Sargent has had to come out of retirement, and he's on YouTube saying it didn't happen.
But Terri, again, like I'm just trying to think, because I understand when you say that it becomes a threat, but like it could come from many different places, and the same way that you're telling us a perspective from like, oh, but I also defend and I also understand the points of the trans and the queers. Like there will be people in the LGB community that maybe are not that, like reasonable as you. So like this thing with like,
I think most of them are. Most of them know where they've come from and how it's been.
That's hard, isn't it? To like put everyone in the same box. Like when you say, it becomes a threat, and like, especially because I don't have children. Like when I talk to parents and friends, like I kind of understand their concern. Like they're not homophobic. They're not transphobic. They're not. But like we talk about those things sometimes, and they say, well, I'm not too sure how to navigate that. I'm not too sure how
I can understand
to open
that.
a space for a boy or a girl. So like I see a new generation, young people coming with an open mind to this subject. And I really hope that in a few years, it won't even be a problem anymore. Like people will be much more comfortable with where they are. But like right now, it feels like a turmoil.
That would be nice, but what we're finding, one of our major concerns is children in school. Between year 1 and 3, they talk about gender identity. There's no need to even bring up sex education between 5 and 8.
But that's because one thing is sex. We're talking about male and female, right?
Yeah, and kids know.
And that one is like chromosomes or whatever.
Yeah.
But then we have the gender thing, which is it
between 5 and 8?
But is it that important? Because in a way,
it's in the curriculum.
But I know, but is it like, does it matter that much? So when they come and say that you can, like, kids should be neutral or whatever,
Kids
and then
should be whatever they want to be.
Yes.
And the problem we're having is that kids is even preschool. Stonewall actually came out several months ago and said toddlers as young as 2 can show gender identity. Now, I was a real tomboy. I never wanted dolls. I wanted trucks, footballs, all sorts of things. I would have been a prime candidate to have been transed, to have been told as a young, vulnerable, impressionable kid, do you want to be a boy? And I mean, when teachers say that to you, you probably think, oh yeah, why not? No, kids just need to be kids. They don't need to be put on a path to, being gay or trans or anything. Just let them be. If they ask questions, answer them.
But isn't that the way? Isn't it what they're doing by saying like, you don't have to pick the blue collar or the pink collar. You can just be, because by allowing them to be, they might change your mind, and then it's not
happening
fine.
Though. That's not happening. That is the concern. We've had a school psychologist. There's a growing number of children being encouraged to believe they have been born in the wrong body and need to medically change their bodies to align with their inner thoughts and feelings in order to resolve psychological distress. They should just be allowed to be kids and decide, when no 5 or 8 year old actually. I mean, what did Bill Maher say? Most kids of 5 or 8 want to be an astronaut. What do you do if they say they want to be a pirate? Cut a leg off and poke an eye out? I mean, this is a thing. I mean, there isn't any, there's no long-term outcome studies for kids who have been medically transitioned. You're sterilising kids at a young age. 13-year-olds are getting double mastectomies and hysterectomies.
So do you think, Terri, the main issue of this whole story, it's actually allowing medical, what's the word, interference? Do you think that's actual problem?
Yeah.
Because like, I'm sorry, like I think we disagree a little bit there,
Yeah,
and I'm
fine.
happy to.
Yeah.
Because the way that I see it is, I understand sex, male, female. So like doctor, kid was born, penis, male,
male, yep.
vagina, female.
Yep.
But then by calling a boy, oh, you're a boy, here's the truck, here's the blue, like that for me is as much,
No,
if not more.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that a girl who plays with a truck, not the boy who gets given the truck, but the girl who plays with the truck. Someone says to her, you were born in the wrong body, will turn you into a boy.
Right.
And
so,
the boy who plays with the doll gets told, oh, you're playing with the wrong toy. We think you must be a girl.
Right.
That's what I'm concerned about.
Right. But then the problem is the way that people are talking, or the options, or like, oh, you should be.
No, I don't agree with kids being told you should play with this or that. I don't care what they play with. But just let kids be kids. I mean, if it's a girl who plays with the truck and is rough and tumble, or a boy who plays with dolls and just wants to sit around and read and, do effeminate things, just let them grow up as an effeminate boy and a tomboy girl, and when they get to an older age, maybe 12, 13, 18, 25, they can say, I don't want to be a girl, or I don't want to be a boy. I don't mind what they do, but it's the transing of the kids that really, really concerns us more than anything, because we believe, I mean, there's already a rife of detransitioners in the UK and the States. The first 1,000 families are actually taking Tavistock to court. That was the gender identity place where all of the operations and testosterone and everything else. Kids went in because they were depressed. There was a 16-year-old, or I think she was 14. She went to Tavistock because she was depressed. After a 2-hour session, she was put on testosterone because they thought she really was a boy, should be a boy. She took them to court. She won the first thing, and then they overturned it. But she was on testosterone for a number of years, and about the age of 20 said, I've made a dreadful mistake. I never, ever wanted to be a boy. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing, I think there's something like 44,000 detransitioners on Reddit. Kids, young adults who have said, I wish you hadn't listened to me, Mum and Dad. We've got something like 38,000 young women in the US on GoFundMe chat rooms trying to raise money for double mastectomies. 38,000 teenage girls. What are they going to do when they hit, 25, 30, and not all of them are happy?
So,
and this is what this is our concern. I don't care what, I don't care, about trans people. They are part of our community. I know we all know a lovely local trans lady here. I've been friends with her for years. I mean, we had people who actually put in submissions in Parliament, trans women who actually turned up, transsexual women who turned up and said, do not allow the self-ID bill to go through. It will not be good for women.
So, again, I'm just going back to the medical interference of things, because with my huge ignorance, I cannot speak on that matter of allowing someone to change their bodies. Personally, I find it very, very complex. It's the same with, like, I know that there's nothing to do, but like it's an example that it was part of my life when I was younger, that I was overweight, and a lot of people were saying, oh, you should do that surgery that reduces your stomach. And I was like, I understand where you're coming from, but even being fat, I knew that there was something with myself that I had to deal with, and maybe an intervention probably will not help. But like, again, I cannot compare these things because they're very distinct matters. So I would agree with a deep understanding of a situation before saying, take this drug.
No,
Even for a headache, I feel that like we live in a very sad society that you just go over the counter and grabs a chemical and puts in your body. So in that point, I can see where you're coming from, and I agree that it's very complicated to change the physiology of someone very young. Okay, I won't say that I agree, because again, I'm not a doctor and I could not say if that's the answer. But like, what I see as a bit conflicting there is that even for me, the idea of boy and girl, it's already the problem. You know, not asking to accept is like, for me, it's even what we grow up with, like, these are the toys, these are the clothing,
totally
these
agree.
are the things. So then if a group of people come and say, oh, maybe you don't belong to these brackets where they put you, in a way, I feel like they are doing something good, because they're saying you've been called a boy and you've been wearing this clothes since you're a baby, and now maybe we can see that you're not fitting into that. And wouldn't that be a case for an intervention and say it's better, not a medical one, because I don't agree with that, but like just to say it's better if you not called any of them?
I totally agree with, gender-free toys and books. I mean, I mean, look, I was a prime contender as a kid. I don't think I only ever wore a skirt to school, school uniform, and I don't think I ever wore a dress until I was probably about 17. But, I would have been a prime contender for someone to say to me, I think you're in the wrong body.
So who is supporting Terri? How do we do, like, what do we do to find balance? Because these people, like transgender people, I think they need to be loved and respected above anything else. And when a group with such an influence comes forward and removes them, I don't want to clash with you on that, because people can do whatever they want, but like, how are we gonna make?
I'm just saying nobody's removing them,
right?
But we have been removed. LGB people have been removed from Stonewall for a long time, and just about every other LGBTQIASS organisation, LGB has been practically wiped.
But wasn't it because of what you said before, that most of the things that you were fighting for, they got resolved? Like
but everybody else has got rights too. I mean, they have every right that everybody else has. They have, in fact, they are as heterosexuals can marry in a lot more countries than what we can. Because a trans woman who wants to marry another woman can say, well, actually, I'm really a man, so therefore, and what they do in the Middle East, because LGB is by death, they actually especially in Iran. I can remember the president there saying, we have no homosexual people. That's because they give them a choice of transition or die. And that is a fact.
Transition or die.
Yep, that's right. You get executed, hanged. There's a couple of women in Iran at the moment, lesbian women, who have been told that. And they're in prison and they're going to die.
So does it become an alternative as well? Do you think like some of the gay people, they find as an alternative because to adapt, because they're not finding support, they're not finding the rights, so they
there would be very few gay trans people. They call themselves, I've already sort of said that there are men who transition or call themselves trans women and then are still attracted to women and try to tell us they're lesbians. And this is what's caused problems. There are very few lesbian clubs around the world now because you can't actually stop trans women from coming in legally. You cannot have a same-sex or, private function. This is what happened in Auckland a number of years ago. There was a women's club and the trans women came in, said, we're here, started problems and were asked to leave, and it took about 10 women to try and get one trans woman out because of the difference in strength.
What do you see as a solution or a path where we could find more, like where people would agree, where people would be content? Because ideally we want, because as I said, like it doesn't matter if you have the T, if you don't have the T, if you have the Q, like it's still a huge part of our society that suffers so much. Are you a lesbian or a trans? Like
we don't need to suffer. We don't need to suffer.
Exactly. People who stand up and say that, like, look, I'm lesbian, I'm gay, I feel like they deserve so much respect and love, because a lot of the heterosexual out there, maybe they feel the same, but they don't have the courage, or they never had the support to stand up for themselves and to open up. So what are we going to do to find more balance, more equality? How are we going to find this dynamics? Because it doesn't feel like excluding. I understand your points, but like, what are we going to do? How are we going to take to the authorities and ask for more rights when?
Well, what rights do they need? They have all the rights, in fact, more than women, because, I mean, we've just had our, with the BDMR.
What is the BDMR?
Births, deaths, marriages, relationships. That's an act, a parliamentary act. Last year, self-ID was passed. That means that any man doesn't even need surgery, counselling, hormones, anything, can, for I think $10, go into a JP, get a piece of paper signed, and his the actual sex or gender on his passport or driver's licence can be changed to female. And then he can, unchallenged, go into... They're having huge problems over in the UK with fitting rooms, which have been made gender neutral. They've found people filming and all sorts of things, masturbating, in women's changing rooms. And I mean, I know that, look, I know there are good men. There are a lot of good men. I got brought up by good men, by a particularly good man. But you only need a few of the actual predators to take advantage of that law, that new law, and, to endanger women and children. A woman might have her young son in there or whatever, so it's not just female children, it's boys as well. And to me, children's safety is paramount.
So would you say, like, and that's, you can speak for the Alliance, because like that's probably an agenda or like points that the group fight for, like what would be the best way to approach the transgender situation in the view of the LGBT? Like would we have a third bathroom? Like what are
I think a lot of places, as they already had men's and women's, and a third toilet, which was basically for disabled. And I'm certainly not insinuating that trans people by any stretch of imagination are disabled in any way, but perhaps just have, we're seeing a lot of, I was just reading today about toilets in the UK where they had everybody's toilet and 2 men's cubicles. You know, but everybody else was allowed to go to the women's, but there were 2 men's cubicles that, you know, had doors on them. And it's a very strange thing to do. So you sort of sometimes feel, are we women really being, you know, undervalued to the point where, you know, they don't care that trans women are, you know, coming into our spaces where we would just prefer to have, you know, our own haven.
How is New Zealand's, how is Aotearoa situation in this story? Because when I came to New Zealand, what I read was like how progressive the country was with gay marriage and everything, and I was like, oh, such a progressive country, so cool. And then I come here and I see amazing people fighting like the good fights. But when it comes to this matters that we are discussing, how is New Zealand?
Well, they're moving more towards gender, you know, neutral toilets, where everybody can just go into, you know, I think even some of them still have urinals, you know, which, if that's the case, I'll start taking my binoculars in to have a good look and get the men upset so they'll say something about it.
Oh, damn. So we have sports,
refuges,
toilets, refuges,
prisons.
You mentioned education. You mentioned prisons.
Yeah, we've got trans women in prisons. You know, and the latest one who went in actually stabbed a woman in Cambridge because she'd refused the trans woman's advances. So, I mean, women in prison aren't going to be safe from someone like that, are they?
Would we be making a good move by providing
a special wing for trans women,
or even more like social services, or like opportunities to talk to professionals, to therapists? Like I'm not saying just for trans, like for people in general. Like, would we be making a better move? Because, like, again,
we've tried.
I don't want to say that like trauma drives a lot of those changes, you know, like, but sometimes people do need to speak up. Sometimes they had issues and then they saw their lives changing. Like, so again, I'm not saying that those things trigger those big changes, but like, do you feel like if we had a well-equipped community where people can go and open up, talk about what they're going through, do you think we would be dealing better with the situations? Because again, I understand your point, but like, it's sad because it doesn't mean that all transgender people are a threat.
No, I totally agree with you on that. You know, but I'm just saying that women should be able to have their safe spaces and sports teams and refuges and prisons and assigned jobs without... You know, I think it's very difficult for a man to understand where, you know, I mean, the number of times I've spoken to women who have walked down a dark street at night and been absolutely terrified looking behind them. You know, a lot of men don't understand that, like even going out to the letterbox at night, things like that. Most women are always conscious of that, and I don't think men realise, you know, how anxious we can be over it.
Yeah, I surely cannot. I understand because I have a sister and a mother who live in a very dangerous country, as you know. So I see the problem, but I cannot feel it. I cannot describe it. Well, in my perspective, I'm always like, in a world that we need more inclusiveness, in a world that we need to understand people, and that's why I like the thing about gender nowadays. A lot of people say, why do we have all these genders? And I'm like, I think you're confused between what sex is and what gender is, because some people, they just simply don't fit in a definition.
Oh, I agree
and I'm
with
like,
that,
well, if you want to call yourself whatever, I feel like that's amazing, because if you give the person that autonomy, maybe in the future they will look back and say, oh, that was not me, but I'm glad people gave me the opportunity to express myself. You know, it could have turned into something traumatic that you were wanting to be something and people didn't let you be that thing.
Most people get that opportunity though here. They do. I mean, in New Zealand. But, you know, I think, you know, we have... LGB Alliance grew out of basically Stonewall not wanting to talk. So we you know, they were continually ignored over there about, hey, what's happening here? Why is this happening? And Stonewall have basically insinuated their way into practically, well, they're getting thrown out now. The time has come where they're being thrown out of universities, the BBC. I think the Ministry of Justice in the UK has thrown them out. They were getting paid millions a year to be consultants on gender. So therefore, this is how it all sort of, you know, the pronouns and everything sort of grew as, you know, a sideline.
Right. That also brought a lot of empowerment to a lot of people, right? To be able to identify themselves as something that they always felt like they should be calling themselves, or they wanted.
Not when you're forced to be. Not when jobs. And I've had a lot of people who have actually come to me saying, I have to put pronouns in my bio, or else.
But like the pronouns, you can be a man and choose to be him and he. That's simple as that, isn't it?
And a lot of and yes, but people don't feel that they have to, that they should have to. A lot of women are saying, yeah, my pronouns are she, her, or I'm a woman, like my, you know, she, her, like my oppression. But why should they have to put it in? And they're actually coerced, especially in government departments, that they must put their pronouns in.
But would that be because other people feel like they should be represented and they should be able to say it? And then,
well, a lot of people don't care about it. They sort of say, "Well, look at me. Isn't it obvious?"
But that's the thing. It's not obvious, is it?
Well, it's not obvious. Well, those who want to should be able to, and fine, they can do it. But don't force everybody to do it. And this is what's happening. You know, and I'm saying that it's happening because of that 0.2% of the population, which is a very important part of our population, don't get me wrong, but the tail is wagging the dog at the moment. We all have to put pronouns in so that, you know, 0.2% of the population doesn't get offended. The Midwife's Council is now thinking of taking woman out of their name, because, you know, I think, what is it, about 0.3% of the pregnancies in New Zealand are by trans men, biological women, but they find the word woman offensive. Now, how many, you know, there are 66,000 births in New Zealand a year by women, and there's about 60 by trans men. So for the sake of that percentage, women aren't being acknowledged. The word mother is going. The language is being erased as well. In Scotland, they've taken woman out of just about every act. And in Britain, it had to go to the House of Lords. They were going to take woman out of the Marriage Act because some people found it offensive because they weren't women. So that's when inclusion becomes exclusion.
Right. It feels like it's a transition moment in history. I don't know where it's going.
I don't know where it's going
either. That's why I said that, like, I feel like younger people, they have way less issues with that, and I think it's just a natural thing.
I think they're going to. Women in the future will suddenly say, why don't we exist? Because the word woman won't be in any legislation around.
But that will probably mean the same for men.
No, it won't. Women are actually described, I'm not kidding, I can send you things from the NHS and New Zealand health system. If you have a cervix, people who menstruate, pregnant people, the word woman is gone. And yet when they talk about men getting prostate checks, the word men is never gone, but the word woman has. And this is what we're fighting as well. Because sorry, it's the trans-identifying males, the trans women, are the ones who are offended by anything that mentions women. So I know it's crazy.
It's a complicated subject, Terri, I must say.
It's not complicated. It's pretty bloody easy. You know, just keep it as it is. Just accept that anybody can be anybody and play with any toy, grow up to be anything they want. If they, you know, if they're not happy, by all means go and, you know, work on yourself and get yourself changed. If you're happier without breasts or happier without a penis, by all means go and do it. But just live your life and don't expect everyone else to change around it. You know, I don't expect everybody around to change for me. I never have. You know, when we got all the rights and everything, it didn't make any difference. It just meant that we were legal.
How do you see? Have you met people who had surgeries who changed sex? Like how do you know?
Yes, I have met them.
Data or
I've met them both ways, and as I say, I've got good friends who are horrified by what's happening. You know, trans women friends who are absolutely mortified, and transsexual friends who are actually have had all the operations. They're not happy with how things are going. Certainly not from there. They believe that, you know, what they're doing to kids is atrocious, and that there are going to be so many problems that are going to have to be fixed, and so many lawsuits that are going to come up. It's basically, to me, it's thalidomide and Jimmy Savile all in one. You've got, you know, the you know, sort of the transing of, you've got transing of gay kids. You know, this is what's really happening as well, which is a concern. The transing the gay away. Kids who would have normally happily have grown up gay are being transed.
Ooh. Have you got something there for us, Taylor? Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Here we go.
Let me have a look on our live chat. Terri, you are a literal hero, and I wish you the best. Your family and friends should be proud. Speaking the truth. There you go. Someone loves you, Terri. That's Brett.
We do have a lot of quiet support, but anybody who speaks up is very anxious about being, you know, having transphobia screamed at them, because we are being told we are sexual racists. We women.
So can you for the people who are listening to, before I read the last message, before you show that, because some people listen to our show, Terri, what does it say in the paper that you're holding, and can you explain to us what that means?
Yeah, sure. I've seen many of these. These are actually from this is from the University of Liverpool, and it's a big rainbow sign saying genital preferences are transphobic. And this is another reason why LGB was formed, because
genital preferences are transphobic. What does it mean, Terri?
Well, it means that we kept, you know, I'm a lesbian. I like women. The last thing I would expect if I went home with someone, if I, you know, who I didn't, you know, or met up with someone, the last thing I would expect or want was someone with a penis. I'm sure you feel that way too, Leo. You'd probably prefer. Well, I don't know what you say. You know.
Yeah. I like women, but like I also understand that someone might like men who dress up as women.
Yes, but this is telling us that genital preferences are transphobic, and lesbians are being called by Stonewall. Stonewall are calling us sexual racists, because we are saying we don't want to date or have sex with trans women because we're not attracted to them, because in reality to us they are still men. But this is what's, you know, this is what we are being told, and this is what is being taught in universities, and therefore it comes down to the schools as well, because the teachers are being taught at university. So, you know, I get called transphobic because I don't want to go out with a trans woman. But you know, there's a lot of homophobia there too, because from the other side. So it becomes very complex.
It does. And that's why I'm here. Like, I'm a bit, like, I won't say puzzled, but like I keep thinking.
Why can't we all work it out? Yeah.
Oh man, right?
Yeah, I know. But this is the thing. We, the people who formed LGB Alliance had been trying for years. I mean, Bev and Kate were marching for gay liberation in the early 70s. You know, so they've been there all along. And suddenly, now they're in their 70s, have had to come out and say, for Christ's sake, you know, we're having to do this all over again. We thought, you know, this had all finished. They tried to talk to Stonewall, saying, why are you saying that, you know, and the same with the men. I've got gay friends who have gone to cruise bars, you know, because as men do, and women have walked in, stark naked, saying I'm a man, and trying to pick up gay guys. And these women are straight. But they're saying I'm a trans man, so and why won't you have sex with me? Sorry, love, I don't do vaginas. But they're being told that they're expected to.
Wow.
So
this is a very complicated.
Oh, I could go on for days, Leo.
Oh, I know. And Terri, like I'm as I said, like the point of having this show, because I know that probably I will get some shit as well. People will come to me, oh, how can you bring that transphobic person to your show? And I'm
absolutely.
like, look, if I don't listen to people, how am I going to make up my mind? How am I going to support the people who I need that are vulnerable? How am I going to understand who I am, right? So that's why we had this chat before the show. And then we said we have mutual respect for each other. And if I don't agree with something, I'm going to tell you that I don't. And if I don't understand, I'm going to tell you that I don't understand. And if I don't have an opinion, I'm going to tell you that I still don't have an opinion. But
I know, and that's fine.
What really puzzles me, what really gets me is like, I know that a lot of people who are navigating, especially young people, and they are confused. And for me, it's upsetting that there's a battle going on. You know, like that there's a lot of arguments when people, that's why I said like support.
We just want to support the kids, and we want to support them as kids. We don't want them being forced into making decisions that they will regret.
No one, right? Adults, kids.
You know, and a 13-year-old getting a double mastectomy, that is, I mean, how many 13-year-olds really know what they want to do? I mean, I didn't know for years what I wanted to do, you know, as far as work or where I wanted to go or what I wanted to be. How can a 13-year-old know? And I mean, kids as young as 8 here in New Zealand are being put on puberty blockers, hormones. And that to me it's really scary, and it's tragic, because it may work out, but in a lot of cases it won't.
Someone sent a message here. I just want to read it before we wrap it up. Leo, you got to watch What is a Woman? I'm not a massive fan of Matt Walsh because he can be quite divisive.
Yes, he is.
He makes so many valid points. Terry's not being uninclusive at all. It's obvious she has the best interest of children, women, and trans at heart. Much love. That's Coral Love. Thank you. Thanks for all the people watching and comments. That's pretty cool. Terri, wow. That's a cool chat, I must say.
I hope we're still friends.
Oh, we are. Like, again, as I mentioned before, like the biggest reason why I'm doing this, Taylor and I were doing this, it's because we believe that you got to listen to people. You got to see where they're coming from. You know, like it's an opportunity for me to change my mind. It's an opportunity for me to say something that might make you think. I don't know, like there's always a moment there in a respectful conversation.
Absolutely.
That you might get something out of it that might change it. So like for us, that's the main thing. And again, I come from a place of ignorance when it comes to gender, to sex. Like for me, it's all about listening. So when a teenager or when someone younger than me comes and opens up about that, I feel like it's a privileged moment. It's a moment it's a gift,
moment of trust
that life is it's giving it to me. So like, how am I going to say something if I don't have the knowledge? So I try my best to do the active listening side of things and just say, look, things change.
Yeah.
Like be kind to yourself, be nice to yourself, tell people that you like things your way. And if you don't like, be courageous to tell them that you don't. And that's my take, like I wouldn't be able to say, let's check the gender agenda or whatever. Like it's not my expertise, so I wouldn't. But like I always come from a place of we are in this together. And in my perfect world, I would love to see a shared toilet where there's respect, where it doesn't really matter that you go and you open it. But I know that you're gonna say
there won't be.
I know, right? But like
because I've already found them.
and that's the same like utopian thing with a community, with a society that doesn't have crime, like
or everybody shares
that
wealth.
That's my thing, like this is what I always say. I'm like I hope and I live my life in a way that I want influence people, and I want to show to them that like we can do things together and we can thrive together, so like I'm gonna live by that.
Yep.
But I understand that it's much deeper and much more complex than this.
It's only been complex for me like this probably in about the last 4 years, when I started just reading by chance. Yeah. But I have had a lot of threats, and you really should look at the cotton ceiling.
Cotton ceiling?
The cotton ceiling.
The cotton ceiling.
Have some reading.
Okay. Oh, Taylor, would you like to add something? Do you guys have something here for us? Thank you so much.
Are you awake over there?
Man.
Have I put you to sleep?
He's fire.
No, I'm awake, just busy here, Terri. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Terri.
Thank you, Leo. It's been
good.
a pleasure. And if anybody ever wants to stop me and talk to me on the street or yell at me, I'm quite happy to sit down and talk with anybody and listen, to your concerns or whatever's going on. We don't, just because we disagree, it's not hate speech.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for you guys watching us at home, thank you so much. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for sending your messages. On Friday, we have a very special show with Dave Rhodes, the master, the music producer, and Anusha Bana, his partner. She is the coolest. She is into a lot of amazing projects. She just left Inclusive Aotearoa. She's an amazing copywriter. She does a lot of cool things for the community. We're going to have a great chat. I'll see you on Friday at 7 p.m. Peace. Ciao.